Hi, my name is Robert Wilson. I am a student at Jones International University, and today I will be speaking about the filmmaker Michael Moore. Michael Moore is a controversial documentarian that has stirred the emotions of its audience and raised the eyebrows of top executives, prominent politicians, and our own government. In the early 90s, Michael Moore released his first film, Roger and Me, and became the platform for future documentaries, as well as setting a precedent in its respective genre. However, natives of Flint, Michigan, where the film was made, were upset with Michael Moore over the way that they felt that they were portrayed in the film. Some have suggested that the people filmed in the movie were filmed not because of their relation to the subject matter, but based on their appearance. People also had questioned Michael Moore's true motives for making such films. They thought he was profiting off of the misery of others, and that he was just as bad as the crooked politicians and executives that he sought to expose. However, what some may not be aware of is that a percentage of the proceeds from his movies are donated back to the people and the cities that he films. Later, opponents would release a book called Michael Moore is a Big Fat Stupid White Man. It's a play off of a book that he had released prior to this. And it claimed that a number of his facts were inaccurate, and that it misled its audience into believing non-factual statements in some of his films. In fact, they even implied that Moore is closer to the rich elite that he tries to expose than the working man that he claims to represent. But Moore stands by his films, claiming that all the events and statements are true, and that he has the documentation to prove it. But this is typical for Michael Moore. His movies and the way he approaches them have effects on people, whether they're positive or negative. And the types of messages that are evoked from his films can sometimes be upsetting to the viewer and well, obviously the subject alike. But they can also be inspirational. The first Michael Moore film that I watched was Bowling for Columbine. It took a look back at the Columbine shootings and brought a broader view of the events. It was for me one of the most moving films that I'd ever seen. I remember being brought to tears at one point, and this is something that I hadn't experienced watching a film before. There was something heartfelt about the way the movie moved, and well, the way the movie moved me. But this is not the case for everyone that had watched the film. In fact, some were upset that they felt as if the shooters were portrayed as victims themselves and not as the monsters that they felt that they were. But Moore always asks his audience to question and challenge the status quo. Whenever I watch one of his films, I feel as though I'm being challenged. I akin it to a professional boxer who steps into the ring for the first time, and he knows that he's going to get hit, but not necessarily how hard. And this is how Moore tries to make his audience feel. In other words, a Michael Moore film can feel as though someone is lifting a veil off of their eyes to help them see what has been happening in front of them the whole time. For example, the film Fahrenheit 9/11 took an introspective look at the World Trade Center attacks. For this, Moore received much scrutiny, and some even questioned its legitimacy. Opponents claimed that a number of his facts were inaccurate and that the movie misled its audience. But Moore, once again, stands by his films and claims that all the events, all the statements were in fact true, and that he had the documentation to prove it. The beauty of a Michael Moore film is the culpability that he places on the responsible parties. In Fahrenheit 9/11, he focuses his attack on the Bush administration and their agenda on terrorism. Moore suggests that the war in Iraq was based on false pretenses, and that the weapons of mass destruction was just a fabricated notion to strike fear into the U.S. citizens to gain their support. He also investigates President Bush's affiliation with the Saudis and Osama bin Laden, and how he ignored warning signs that indicated an imminent attack on the U.S. But these are just examples of what the entire movie encompassed. From Roger and Me to his most recent film, Capitalism, A Love Story, Michael Moore has ruffled his fair share of feathers. He is without doubt one of, if not the most, recognized filmmakers of our time. Well, at least my time. He has made some of the most compelling and thought-provoking films of our generation. But with fame and recognition comes scrutiny. It seems ironic that someone who examines the practices and misdeeds of others would have a light shine back on himself. But I think that this is only fair. If you're holding someone else up to a certain standard, then you yourself should be held up to the same ideals. Although Michael Moore has received much backlash for his controversial films, the message that is trying to be conveyed is always one of hope. Hope that by making these sorts of films, that someone will take notice and bring about change. It is through these messages and sometimes upsetting images that we are challenged as the audience to think further about the subject. The filmmaker never seems to fail at asking his audience to be more than mere bystanders, but active participants. Thank you.